Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Thursday morning call and the evening call. Since it's a global session going on, I'm sure some of you will be listening all over the world. So today we're going to have a short discussion and interview, something I've looked forward to for the last few days and weeks. It's very interesting to note that I've never met Louis Coffey, and Louis has been a close friend of mine for the last 1 year, but we've never met. Which in a sense for this particular interview is very good because I somehow felt that meeting her face to face would put a sort of a prejudice and a sort of limitation on my own understanding of Lewis Coffee. So what I only know about her is the way her mind and soul works, and we have been through multiple meditation sessions together. So I know her from that perspective, and this particular interview is going to draw on that aspect of Lewis, which hopefully will make this quite unique and different from the normal interviews that you may have. So Lewis has been in the industry for many years, a BNI member, an ambassador and director, which is how I know her. She also had her coffee business, but what's important to understand is that it's not always been a silver spoon in the mouth. On the contrary, it's been multiple mud spoons, uh, if I may, if I'm put across. So, my first question to Lewis, because she's been through so many adversities, and so many ups and downs in her life. Uh, and my first question to her is, what is the one thing that seemed to pull you out of all the situations that you have been at various situations in your life? What is that one or two things that really, egged you out?
Wow, thank you for first of all for introducing and kind of setting the platform here, and for really, it's humbling, and I'm very grateful to have you, someone who I admire, respect, and hold in high esteem, even though, like you said, we've never met, to even believe that interviewing me was a helpful thing. So I'm very honored and privileged for that. And if I were to pick one or two things, for me, because I was raised by a single dad, I had a lot of, that's how I connected with you. I had a fair amount of childhood trauma and loss, and we'll call it abandonment. That's what the psychologist would say. I had a big, big fear of rejection when I first got into sales. And I got into sales, we were all actually born to be salespeople, right? Ultimately, as kids, my kids are always selling me something. They're always trying to convince me to say yes, and they are not afraid of no. And so as I've evolved over the years, and as a mom, as a salesperson, as someone who had a lot of trauma as a kid, looking back, the number one thing that helped me was when I heard Jim Rohn say, "You've got to learn how to discipline your disappointments." And so I always say in BNI, actually, and when I do my presentations and when I talk to my sales force, that's my key to success: discipline my disappointments. Don't take no for an answer. Actually seek out rejection. And it took me a while to overcome that. I remember the first no's I got in real estate, I took it personally because of my childhood, right? And through personal development and listening to someone like Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar, all the greatest of our time, even though now they've passed on, they still speak to my heart, my soul, and my mind to just discipline disappointments, never give up, and keep going. That would be number one. And I know that's maybe more of a esoteric answer or response, not a specific doing something. It was definitely something that I had to condition my mind through. And then the second thing is I actually wrote a book with the title "No One Succeeds Alone." And so I've always looked to, whether it was sports in middle school, high school, college, and then when I got into sales, I always had a mentor and I always had a coach. So I hired my first coach in business at age 22, even though I didn't have a lot of money. I knew that I needed someone to hold me accountable and hold me to a higher standard. Otherwise, left to my own devices, all of those no's would have easily, sent me to a place where I could have quit. Even with as much discipline as I have, as an athlete, business person, I still need that accountability person, which for me was a coach and a mentor. And so having those people in my life. So those are the two things: disciplining my disappointments through that mindset, and then having those mentors and coaches.
Wow. Great. That's really amazing to hear that, discipline your disappointments and never giving up, and no one succeeds alone. The book that you wrote. Now, I'd like to actually draw up on the point that today a lot of young people, they focus on intelligent quotient, the IQ factor. Of course, now they're becoming intelligent. A lot of parents are becoming intelligent. A lot of youngsters they're also focusing on the EQ, which is the emotional quotient. Of course, they're also trying to focus on the SQ, social quotient. But of late, there's been a buzzword, and it's not really come up. And I think this is something that you have mastered unconsciously, and that's called as the AQ, which is the adversity quotient. How can you handle adversity? So intelligence quotient, fine. Emotional, I can handle emotions well. Social, I can handle social quotient well. But can I handle adversity? And so what's your advice to budding entrepreneurs as a coach? What is the role of how they can handle adversity, and how can they build in their so-called adversity quotient? Have you identified such a thing in your own self, consciously, unconsciously, and how would you, help people build it up?
Wow. Is there such a thing as AQ? Or did you just
I,
make that up?
I just made it up.
I love it, because I'm like, wow, there's a book in there somewhere. Anyway, you're giving me ideas, because I want to write a book this year, so I'm looking for topics. That's a big question. You might have to ask me a couple different ways so I make sure I answer it effectively. Number one, when I think of adversity, for me, is staying humble and asking for help. Don't ever believe that you have all the answers. And even if you are starting out in business and you think you can't afford a coach, I would say you can't afford not to have one. Finding a mentor, finding someone who has gone before you, and having them on speed dial, like literally having them on speed dial so that you can reach out. I have a saying that was taught to me through my adversity times, and I can't remember who I can actually give the credit to, but when in doubt, reach out. So when I'm ever having doubts on myself, again, adversity beats a person down. Trust me, I've been beat down quite a bit. And so understanding and seeing for what it is, not, you can have maybe a moment where you have the "oh, woe is me" concept, but really it's about how can I consciously get out of this situation? How can I grieve through this adversity, this loss that you have, and keep going? And so those were my conscious thoughts. Like you said, unconsciously, I was already, I think, somewhat conditioned by my single dad. I was raised by a single father who faced more pain and more adversity than most people that I've ever met in my life. And he didn't have a choice. He had to provide for 4 kids, and he just kept going. Now there's a balance in there somewhere that I've also learned, is there's times and places where it's important through adversity to stop, to reflect, to breathe. A lot of, I have an autoimmune disease, for example. And when I was facing some of my biggest adversity, I know that I manifested that physical disease because of my subconscious mind, fear, shame, just anxiety, stress, depression. I went through it all. And being able to slow down and not just push through the adversity, but just sort of sit back and observe it and watch, almost like meditation. That's why I love meditation, and the fact that you teach it is fantastic, because that's what I've learned. Also, through using meditation as a tool, you could add that to the adversity quotient. is just being able to, almost like a third party observer, almost having your own out of body experience, not to sound weird or whatever, but really just slowing down and accepting what is, not judging it, and saying, what can I learn through this? What can I take from this and make myself better? Because there's a saying in America, I don't know if you guys have this in India, but there's always someone with a bigger boat or a bigger house or a more expensive car, and conjointly there's always someone with a bigger problem or a massive amount of adversity. I met a guy in BNI yesterday, and we've been talking, and I've been following up with him. We want to do business together, and I've probably been talking to him for about 6 months. And it's important to just be with people. After I've gone through so much adversity, I usually know that means there's something going on. And I had no idea. Turns out his wife had her father die, and a week later, her brother die. And then in the next month, they had 2 joyous occasions, engagements, but there's still this adversity over here, this massive amount of grieving. And I had compassion, I had empathy, because I had gone through some similar adversity myself in the last 2 years. And so that's why I brought up disciplining your disappointments, because the adversity that comes to you, it's either going to make you better or it's going to make you bitter. And I want to choose the better path. And so by slowing down, building that discipline, and reflecting and learning, what can I do different? How can I be different? And meditating on things, that's really what helped, if I were to call it the adversity quotient. All of those things, if I could go back to my 20-year-old self, I would give all of that advice, or my 30-year-old self. I'm 42, almost 43 now. So I'm still learning, and I know I don't have all the answers, but gosh darn it, those adversity moments, I've learned way more from that than the, massive successes that I've had.
Wow. It's really a lot to ponder around. My
Yeah, no,
third question.
you opened a big question, so I hope I answered it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that actually builds me up to my next question. And we may or may not have time for the fourth, but this one is also something which is quite big. So, amongst all the successful businesses that you see across the world, it accounts to only 28%. There are 72% of people who begin businesses, entrepreneurs, who close down within 36 months of their operations. They start a business or an idea, and in 36 months they close down. That's a huge number, 72% of across the world. So whatever business we are seeing is only 30%. So my third question is, what's your advice to young budding entrepreneurs to ensure that they are on the other side of the fence and not on this side of the fence? Because 36 months they can close down, 70% chance. So what's your advice to young budding entrepreneurs, salespeople, or people wanting to grow big? So
Great. That's a great question. I mean, because I've been in the fitness industry, and I've seen people yo-yo diet and stop and start and stop and start, probably a much higher percentage than 70%. So it's like a human condition to get an idea. Ooh, shiny object. That looks good. Let me try that. And then they try to do it on their own, or it's hard, and they want to go the path of least resistance. So they quit. And I'm not saying that, quitting a business is bad. I want to also throw that out there. I think most people go to college in the US, and over 50% of them, I'm myself included, I went to college for broadcast journalism. And then once I got into the industry officially as a gainfully employed, I found out, what, this is not my purpose. This is not my passion. This is not what I want to do. So I was one of those people that I quit that career, and I got into sales. So it's okay to, as Zig Ziglar always said, you can be a wandering generality. It's just, you've got to find something that lights your fire, your flame. and go with that and give it a good, honest effort, knowing that it takes 2 to 3 years. Statistically, I know some people in business who didn't pay themselves a check for 5 years. So understanding a business mindset takes time, and it's not overnight success. So that's one bit of advice. The reason I did so well so quickly in sales, again, I'm going to be a little redundant here. I had a mentor and a coach. So I didn't have to just like a blind person, in the dark, just figure things out and make things up on my own. I had a systematic approach with these two people, and I quickly made 6 figures. Granted, there's a lot of variables to that. So I'm not talking about it's all about the money. It is about finding something that makes your heart sing and finding those right people who've already had the success you want in the industry or the field or the career that you have chosen. And you've got to learn as much as you can from those masters who have gone before you, and then you won't quit. Because if you have the taste of success earlier on, there's no turning back. So that's the key is and then trust me, I've recruited, I do a lot of recruiting. I recruit salespeople. That's part of one of my businesses is recruiting salespeople for a technology company. And I've seen a lot of people sign on and quit because they didn't make money fast enough. So again, number one, patience is a virtue. Have a plan. Find a way to maybe make some money. I mean, especially the young people of today, I've seen they love to make money and they love to stretch a dollar. A lot of them aren't even buying homes because they want to save, invest, they want to travel. They're doing things differently than even my generation. So I love it. I think it's brilliant, and you might have to work 2 or 3 jobs or side hustles or whatever to also, whatever career you're in, start. We're in that gig economy. That's why Uber and Lyft and all of these side hustles are very popular now for the millennials, and I support it 100%. There was a time where I was working 3 or 4 jobs in my first year in real estate just to make sure I had that cushion. So I guess kind of in summary, have a long-term mindset, 2 to 3 years minimum commitment. Unless it just isn't you, then I'm all for moving on. That's just me. That's my philosophy. You gotta be passionate about it. You gotta be excited about it. Be coachable. Find those mentors and coaches, and then do whatever you gotta do to have multiple streams of income sooner rather than later. So that's my answer.
Wow. Wow. And my last question for today, we have spoken about diversity. We have spoken about what pulls you out of various situations. We have spoken about advice to young entrepreneurs, and they can improve themselves in life. So my last question for today is, as a leading coach for various people, entrepreneurs, salespeople, etc. What are the first 3 or 4 things that concerns you, or that you look at when you get a new coachee in front of you? It's important that we tackle the first 3 or 4 things that you normally, it could change, but you normally, what are the few things that you try to put them on to get them onto the bandwagon, probably, as you say? What could it be?
Love that. Love that. And I might even type in the chat here so I stay on track. But number one is, what is their vision? That's my first question, is where do they see themselves in 3, 5, 7, or 10 years? That tells me a lot about that person. If they can't even say where they'll be in 3 years, we got a lot of work to do. But if they can at least say, where are you going to be in 1 year? Like I call this year 2020 vision. When are you going to, or what are you going to create by the end of 2020? At the very least, that's our baseline. However, I really want to know what's in their mind and in their heart And, a lot of people do vision boards. I love vision boards. I think they're phenomenal. I do them every year. I've manifested quite a bit of results with vision boards. Our vision 3 years ago, now 3.5 years ago, was to move back here to beautiful Southern California, and Deepak has been part of the journey. A year ago, we were freezing our butts off in Minnesota, and we are so grateful every day. We just sort of pinch ourselves because we had that vision, we manifested it, we created it with the same coaching principles that I teach people on. So number one, what is their vision? And then I also ask, how committed are you? So what is your commitment level? One of my mentors, I love Eric Lofholm. He always says, what level are you going to play at? What level is your commitment on a scale of 1 to 10? How committed are you to getting X, whatever your vision is? And that same conversation is, what are the sacrifices you're willing to make in order to, that goes back to kind of the question you mentioned, the third question is, commitment usually also requires not just time and mindset, it requires sacrifice. What are you willing to give up to get that vision? My husband and I gave up a lot in order to get to California in the timeline that we set for ourselves. We gave up a lot of going out and spending money frivolously, and we said no to a lot of parties because we were hunkered down, focused on our business because we knew we needed more money in order to make this move happen. So what is your commitment level? The next one is, I do what I call a time use assessment. So I want to see your calendar. I want to see, how are you spending your time? Because time, as we all know, is our only non-renewable asset. You can make more money. You can create all sorts of different things. However, these last 10, 20 minutes that we've been on here, we don't get back, right? We're recording it in time, so it's going to be out there on the World Wide Web. But how do you spend your time? How you show me how you spend your days, your minutes, your hours, your weeks tells me a lot about your level of commitment. And if we gotta orchestrate or reassess or redistribute how you spend your time to get you to that vision, that's 100% a passion of mine. I love time management. It doesn't exist. It's time use and time choices. But I'll just say time management because that's kind of a buzzword. Most people understand that. How you manage your time is critical because life is all about throwing distractions at you, especially in the social media age. It will be interesting to see what happens in the next 10 years for the millennials, because I truly believe, I grew up before the internet. I know you did too. Now we use it all the time. We're using it right now. However, I think social media is one of the biggest distractions for business people. And I even have 30-minute time blocks twice a day where that's all I'm doing on social media right now, because I have big goals for 2020, big dreams that I want to manifest. And so how you spend your minutes, your hours, and your days is critical for that success, especially in your first 2 to 3 years of your business. And then, of course, the plan. So just putting together a daily, weekly, quarterly plan. We call it, I'm a certified 12-week year trainer. I do workshops, half day, full day. And through all of that process, we break it down, all of this, your vision, your commitment, how you're going to also stay accountable. That goes with the commitment piece. And then, of course, your time use through your days, your weeks, and 12 weeks. And really just being hyper diligent, hyper focused, and then going out and repeating that throughout the course of a year. You can get way more done than the average person if you hyper diligently focus on your time and then have some sort of accountability, whether you hire me or they hire you, whatever. As long as they have some type of accountability, because again, left to our own devices, I don't believe anybody can accomplish everything on their own. they've got to have some sort of accountability mechanism in place.
Wow. I see the flow, vision to commitment to time use and finally to accountability. And I think with that, you've kind of covered a huge, you've given a big giant leap, to your coaches. In fact, I'm envious of your coaches, who are getting this right in from the, from the, in the right way, in the right method. The flow is, perfect. And I'm quite sure that, they'll be doing really, really well in the first few weeks, once they are tied up with you. Awesome. So thank you so much, Louis, for this 30 minutes that we got out of your busy schedule. And it was a pleasure speaking to you. In fact, I've made my own notes and I've been, kind of writing it down as it goes on. It's amazing. I think 30 minutes, I've made good use of my time. So that's all I can say now. Thank you very much to all the viewers for tuning in and watching this fabulous interview with Louis Coffey. She is a Sapphire Director at iBoomerang, creator of Coffee Enterprises, and a loving mother of 3 lovely children. I've seen a couple of the kids. Again, it's all on Zoom, but amazing mother, amazing wife, and businesswoman and coach. So thank you so much again, Louis. Thank you.
Thank you. Have an amazing day, everyone. And don't forget to reach out to us in our private Facebook group. If you're watching this, if you happen to stumble upon this at any point in time, I've got this on YouTube. I'm going to place how you can reach out to me and Deepak and be a part of our experience for free. Have an amazing year.